What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 23 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. And joining us for the first time on the show, one of our Patreon producers, ThatDocGuy.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Doc.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's been I feel like it's been a long time coming. It's been I think we said we'd put it in the works for a while.
Yeah, we talked about doing this last year. I think anyway, right? And yeah, it never quite came together.
I believe we discussed it like spring of last year or something like that. We just
I think it was pre-FlipScreen.
It was pre-FlipScreen.
Okay, yeah. So it's definitely a long time coming, and I guess we were just waiting for the perfect episode, right? And when we talked last week about doing a special all about VR, virtual reality, Doc, you threw your hat in the ring as someone who's been in the VR game for quite some time, has had a lot of time with the tech. So we thought now would be the perfect time to call you up to the big leagues here to chat about VR. And the future of it.
Well, hey, here I am to talk about VR and hopefully the future. If there continues to be a future, depending on if Facebook wants to be Facebook.
Yeah, we'll talk all about that. So I'm excited. I think it'll be a good one to dig in on. But before we get into that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of January. They are, of course, Andy Radford, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Smilky Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all for your support. And, especially to you, Mr. Valenz.
You're welcome.
So, let's... I forgot. There's a couple other things I got to plug real quick. Go to the website, FlipScreen.games. That's where you can get links to all the other places we are.
That's just the wrong shit as well. I've screwed this ThatDocGuy up.
Steve messed the doc up for me this week. It's okay, all right? It's fine. But we had a good time on this week's One More Thing, which is our Patreon exclusive podcast. If you want to go above and beyond to show your support, of course, the Patreon is the best way to do that. And on this week's show, we invented a brand new dessert that will undoubtedly go down in the history of the UK's culinary traditions. So you're going to want to go check that conversation out. And, if you don't have any money to toss our way, there are plenty of ways you can get involved with the show. Come join the Discord, right into the show, questions@flipscreen.games, and be a part of our main topic, just like a bunch of folks did this week. Let's jump into it. All right? Before we get into the VR talk, we'll do a little bit about what we're playing. Steve has 85 VR games on this list. So, Steve, we're going to table you.
This wasn't even all of them.
We're going to table you until we get to the VR proper discussion. Then you can talk all about the stuff you've been playing. Doc, since you're our guest, why don't you start things off?
Lately I've been doing a lot of Sea of Thieves. I think everybody knows what Sea of Thieves is at this point. It's some basically free roam, yo-ho-ho pirates. And a bunch of Elite Dangerous. I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with Elite Dangerous. The absolute Spark Notes. It is a pure open world in a 1-to-1 replica of the Milky Way. And you are thrown into the world in a spaceship. The game says go, and you go. You go make money, you go fight aliens, you go cargo running, anything you want to do.
And it's just like a
wide galaxy.
Total open sandbox kind of thing. Is there a story you can follow, or is it literally just kind of
an MMO? It is an MMO in the sense that you will see other players. Other players can affect the world. Example: if I were to go to a station and buy out all of their cobalt and then sell it 50 light years out, that would affect the economy of that particular region.
Interesting. Okay. So it's more about the water cooler kind of the players create the stories through interactions rather than something like Sea of Thieves where, it is that, but there's also those threads you could go chase if you want to, work for this specific guild or do this or that.
Exactly. There's a lot of background simulation, which is what a lot of players call it, which is basically I work for the Federation under... For example, I'll use me as an example. I work for the Federation under the, superpower of... I'm blanking on her name. I'm just going to say one other superpower, just off the top of my head. I could work under Zachary Hudson. He is at present the highest level superpower. So if I run and do a bunch of missions for him, he's going to gain influence. He's going to gain systems. Other superpowers will lose systems and lose influence.
Now, and is that an NPC or is that a player?
That is an NPC.
Okay.
That is an NPC. There is a base level of NPCs and pre-existing game, but all the interactions you do are all player-based.
That's cool. Games like that I find so fascinating on like a technological and sociological level, but like that I find them to be like so intimidating. And every time I've tried to get into a game like that, I'm like, man, if I was a different kind of gamer, I would love this, right? But it would have to be like the only thing I played, you know? I feel like
it's like learning the systems, right? You've got so much to dig into, but it also sounds like there's an entire economy you kind of have to get to grips with as well, especially if like, oh, my cobalt here is super cheap, but if I fly out there, then it's going to be really expensive, and I can, you've got to master all of those kind of things.
There isn't a lot of tutorial. All of the information I gained was from friends who've also played the game.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
And Google forums.
I feel like that's how everyone gets into an MMO, though, right? It's a friend introduces
and also,
you. That's why going to Destiny.
I feel like survival games in general are also kind of like that. Like the more like, not that this to say this is a survival game, but like it sounds like it has a lot in common with those kinds of survival sandbox games, like something like The Forest or like Rust or something like that, where
exactly
it is kind of just like, hey, like this is a persistent world, and you and your buddies can build a settlement, but if you log off, you might log back on and somebody burned it down, or whatever, things like that.
Yes, it's very similar to that. So like there's something like 35, 37 different ships you can buy, ranging from 44,000 credits to 186 million credits. 206 million credits.
Now, is there like a microtransaction system? Like, can you just pump money into it and get a ship like that, or do you have to work for it?
No. There are microtransactions, but they are pure cosmetics.
Oh, that's awesome.
Engine detailing, like change the color of your exhaust, change the color of your lasers. You could paint the name of your ship on the side of it. That's how I have it on mine. I put in $20, just bought the basic kits, so I could put my names up, and then just kind of leave it at that. But no, you cannot buy you buy into the game with the base purchase. I think it's $40 default, maybe $35, and then you just go from there. Every single person you see with a ship got it through work, not by
that's cool
buying it.
I feel like you'd have to have it operate that way for a game with like a realistic economy like that to not be just total nonsense, otherwise it would be way too easy to upend the system.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are some exploits. Admittedly, I don't want to get super deep into it, but waste time on the show. But occasionally you'll get a really good mission that's really easy. Example: go collect 200 units of silver, and you'll get 50 million credits out of it.
Whoa!
Okay. And you can share that mission with your with your friends. So what me and a group have been doing is I've got 3 missions for 50 mil. Hop on, we'll get them. All 4 of us then immediately got 150 million for 0 work.
Oh, so it's per person? It's not like...
Yes, it's per person, not split.
Okay. Wow, okay. That's cool.
That's very lucrative.
Yeah.
And what's the moment-to-moment gameplay like? Is it like a Rust first-person style thing, or is it more like an EVE Online, there's more strategy, I'm looking at spreadsheets kind of thing?
Have you ever played Euro Truck Simulator or American Truck Simulator?
I have, yeah.
Picture that, but throw in some space dogfighting every now and then. Yep.
Cool.
Throw in some dogfighting every now and then, and that is essentially your moment to moment.
Do not tell Macaulay about this game.
Yeah, but this is 100% Macaulay's game.
Oh, I might tell Macaulay about this game.
Especially if there's like role play involved. Macaulay's big into like role playing.
Well, as per your request, I won't tell Macaulay, but that definitely
you can tell
seems
Macaulay
like...
No,
you
definitely should. I'm sure they will like
I probably will if they haven't already heard of it.
No, they definitely haven't heard of it.
Because me and my friends have actually just started up a clan, and we're going to try and influence our particular area
there
a
you
little
go.
bit.
No,
so
perfect. Yeah, call in some new blood then. That'll work out perfectly. Well, speaking of spacefaring adventure, my big achievement this week was closing the door on the Mass Effect trilogy. I've been chipping away at it since the Legendary Edition came out last year now, and I finally finished up Mass Effect 3. I think I talked a little bit about it last week in terms of where I was at. I was kind of like maybe 60-70% of the way through the game. I had just done the stuff on Rannoch, which if you've played the game before, if you're familiar with the universe, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I spent like a couple days just like clearing out side quests, and then I literally got to a point where there were 0 side quests left, and I was not planning on doing that, but I just kind of was like, oh, I don't really want to stop playing. So I kind of just did everything that there was to do. With very
Did you not just glance over to your big impendingly growing backlog and think, I do need to clean this game up at some point?
Yeah, I mean, that is the mentality with which I went into playing it. I was like, I'm near the end. I want to finish this before, at least before Pokemon Legends Arceus comes out, all that stuff, that's
now Kirby.
Yeah, like there's a lot on the horizon included. So I knew I needed to wrap up Mass Effect sooner than later. But yeah, it really got me thinking a lot about Mass Effect 4, because like we saw that trailer and it has a lot of hints about kind of where it looks like Mass Effect is going from here. And I like went down a deep rabbit hole of like reading all of these theories and picking apart the poster, and one of the bigwigs at BioWare just came out and recently talked about it and the next Dragon Age, and it said that there were like at least 5 hints about the future of Mass Effect like on the poster and the stuff that had been released already. So like everybody in the community was going nuts. It was a good like time for me to finish it because it was coincidentally back in the conversation. And I went down that rabbit hole hard, and I have just so many feelings about the fact that I seemingly will get to pick up and have everything I did, carry over now to the next game, and that it's gonna at least at some capacity be a direct sequel. I'm very interested to see how that shapes out, because there's some clues that maybe point to them like making certain choices canon, which is something I would really be upset about. Because I feel like the whole point of the series is your ability to make choices and have your own journey. So I don't know. I'm in such a weird spot because I feel like my hype level and my, faith that BioWare is like on the right track and is going to deliver games that I'm excited about is higher than it's been in like a console generation at the very least, right?
Which why do you think that is though? Because like the original blood, Casey Hudson's no longer there.
So
he got ousted from the studio. So what makes you feel that they can now deliver what they couldn't under his leadership?
So I think it's a multifaceted thing. I think like when you look at the way that BioWare has been operating throughout the PS4 and Xbox One generation, there's a lot of choices that were made from the top down that affected the way that certain products came out. Like Dragon Age Inquisition, I believe, would be a better game if EA didn't have an across-the-board initiative to bring everybody on Frostbite, right? If you read Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, Jason Schreier's book, there's a chapter about Inquisition and how those tools were notoriously difficult to work with and that it really hampered development. Then you have Anthem, which is a game that Jason wrote quite a bit about and was plagued by some of the senior leadership not really agreeing on a direction and not being able to come together and find the fun and agree on what the game should or shouldn't be. And also it felt like a game that was made in reaction to the success of Destiny. I won't blame that on EA, but it's something that it wasn't what BioWare should have been working on, in my opinion. And then Andromeda was made by their B team and was plagued in its own ways. And all of those, so it's like all of those failures come with very noticeable caveats, right? And those aren't things that like I'm trying to excuse away, but I think that what we've seen from EA over the last couple of years and BioWare, in turn in like the last year or so with the Mass Effect edition is like a real change in direction and culture. And Steve, this is something you and I talked about with them like feeling like they're trying to like change their image and kind of get back to their roots and court, better press. And, we've talked a lot about the work that Vince Zampella has done since he joined the board and what that meant for Respawn and, Jedi Fallen Order. And again, a huge change in policy where they've said for years they weren't interested in re-releasing and remastering games. They said a Mass Effect trilogy collection was never going to come, and it did. And now you have a BioWare that has still a good number of veterans still there, and still, in big creative positions. But you also have a lot of young blood that are people, our age, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger, that love BioWare's games and love their IP and love the kinds of games that BioWare is known for making. And look at the, critical and financial success that they found with, with the Legendary Edition. And in that blog post that was made on their blog recently, they talked about how the games that they're working on now, Mass Effect 4 and the next Dragon Age, are what they're known for. They are those like classic story-driven single-player experiences, not, these half-baked experiments with other styles of gameplay or like with projects that were frankly like underdeveloped or rushed, and I don't think it's a guarantee that they're going to slam, but I think the fact that they took the time to go back to their roots and rework on the original Mass Effect trilogy and have that fresh in their minds while they're working on the next one is something that gives me a lot of hope that, that they'll be able to deliver the kind of game that I love from them and that I've missed so much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Anthem thing didn't make sense on paper. Like looking at it, it looks like it should make sense. Destiny, it can tell a good story, and I think BioWare could have done the same thing there. Like my history of BioWare is Baldur's Gate. It pretty much stops there. I didn't play any of the Mass Effect games or Dragon Quest games, but they're very different. And I think they could have gone through a transformation to do something new, to do something fresh again. They just didn't do it well enough for it to stick. And going back to what they are good at and what they have historically been great at, I think makes a lot of sense. But EA seems to be nailing it with single player experiences lately. So I'm glad to see that that's what they're going back to.
Yeah, I mean, me too, because, Dragon Age has been canceled twice now and restarted development, and it went from being a proper single-player Dragon Age experience to being a Anthem-style online game to being restarted again, and, it feels like between BioWare and the overall culture at EA changing, it feels like the right time for them to kind of get back to what they do best, and I'm just so excited for that. And if it doesn't come together, I can live with that because I've lived through a Mass Effect game I didn't like before, right? So I can live through it again. But I have so much hope that it will be good, and just having that hope reignited is something that like it feels good. I'm excited. I'm excited to get back into those worlds and to spend more time with their games. And hell, I'd love to see them develop a new IP.
Would be nice. Yeah, I mean they tried it with Anthem to be fair.
But like just do that, but like,
single player.
But and make it a good game.
Doc, have you got any like history with BioWare games? Have you played Mass Effect or Anthem or anything?
You might have remembered I was very vocal about the death of Anthem when that happened back on Reddit last year. I was very upset by that. Anthem had such a potential to be an incredible game. Even what I did play, the unfinished buggy mess, was great, honestly. Outside of that, I have very little to no experience with BioWare games. Outside, was BioWare a Fallen Order, or was Fallen Order?
No,
a
that's
BioWare game?
No, that's Respawn.
That's Respawn.
Respawn. Okay, so no, not Fallen Order, but I did play maybe an hour of Mass Effect 1, 2 hours of Mass Effect 1, 7 or 8,
about-
9
that's a-
years ago.
It's about where I go, to be honest with it, Doc. And
I'll
I
tell you
didn't
what.
play anymore.
Well, you still have to finish that, don't you?
Yeah, he does.
No, it's not gonna happen. Pete's getting a trophy instead
You're
as
such a
as a
rat.
consolation.
It's coming out of your
prize. Arena,
You're
too,
paying
but-
for the trophy then, all right? Like that's not coming out of the company's coffers then. This is ridiculous. This guy backing out. He's losing bets
Do you
and
know-
squelching.
I traded that game in today. I actually traded that game in today. It's on Game Pass now. So it's like, why am I going to
You're a rat bastard. I hope you know that. I hope you know that.
You no, hang on. You know that I'm very rare to come to Steve's defense, but it is on Game Pass, so he still has access to it.
You're right, but I'm just saying he has no honor, Doc. No honor.
That's true. That's true. There is a certain honor to be
Yeah, well, as we
expected
know
of
from last week's Nintendo Noise, Pete rhymes with cheat, so it must be true, right? That's what True was saying.
and I said we would have some words about the Pete slander, but we'll keep that off the podcast.
No, come to my defense, Doc. That's why I brought you on. I needed a champion here. I got my co-hosts conspiring against me because be like calling me a cheater because one of my predictions was right. Like, get out of here.
Well,
We
which
don't know that
prediction
yet.
was that
Might still be
again?
delayed.
And how was
It
he?
was the
And how were you
Horizon
cheat-
one. How
and
ridiculously
how did he
easy it
cheat?
was.
Yeah, because I said that Horizon wouldn't be
Objected
delayed.
to it at the time, and you just kept
It wouldn't be
pushing
delayed, and then
pushing.
it wasn't delayed. How was that cheating?
Well, we'll see.
Because it's somehow my fault that like they're out here predicting
What if
things
it
that are
does get
never going to
delayed now,
happen.
though? Because I'll be so satisfied if that one gets delayed and God of
It
War
would be
arrives on
very
time.
funny if it got delayed.
Honestly, at this point, I would rub your face in it. Because I would be like, see, this is proof that Steve is a cheater. Because he's calling me out for something because I was correct. Oh, the next day, something you predicted happened, cheater. It's like, what the fuck?
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was people in the Discord just pointing out the fact that
And then you
it had
tried
gone
to.
gold.
Yeah, no. Look, the people in the Discord can say whatever they want. You're on the podcast, man. You can't just be
On the
throwing
record.
slander out here. Anyway, let's transition over to our talking point for the week, which is going to be, I guess, we'll say extended reality, because we're going to talk about VR, but also AR, and kind of just the metaverse and all of these different kinds of emerging technologies, and specifically through the lens of games, and kind of what our experiences have been with them, what we think of the current landscape, and kind of, I guess, what our hopes for the future from both a positive and a negative sense, because I have some thoughts on some of that stuff. Yeah, so Doc, I want to start with you, with your personal history with this tech, because obviously, like we said, we brought you on because I know you have a lot of experience with VR. I was an early adopter of VR and have since fallen off, and Steve is just getting into them now. So what is your relationship to VR? And I'm sorry, what's up, Steve? You're muted. Am I missing?
I was saying I had Google Cardboard. That counts, right?
No, get out of here.
Yeah,
Here
that's
I
more
was.
AR.
Here I was thinking.
As somebody who had Google Cardboard, I would say that's AR.
This guy, right?
You think so?
Definitely. Unless I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure it had a spot for your camera to look through.
It did, and it had this really cool magnet thing on the side that interacted.
Yeah, the button, right?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
magnet.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the little
interacted with
cardboard
the,
button that had a
internal-
touch
yeah.
sensitivity. Yeah, and it would push a button on your screen.
Mhm.
I do remember that.
Back when VR was still a baby concept.
Yeah, definitely. I remember doing that at like a Verizon store, and it was like there was like a shark swimming by, and it was like woo, like.
The bottom of the ocean one. I remember
Yeah,
that. That's the one that stands out.
So anyway, Doc, what's your history with the tech?
Yeah, no, I picked up the Oculus Rift CV1, the original edition, back in 2017 at base MSRP. Look at this man just reaching back and grabbing his soda.
Oh God,
I'm
man.
jealous I'm jealous of the refrigerator.
This is the
behind
one
your desk.
thing I'm gonna miss about working in my kitchen. I'll tell you what. It's
You
just-
won't miss anything.
I'm
You'll
I'm
just buy
very
yourself,
jealous of the freedom that grants you.
just buy
but yeah,
yourself an
picked up
Xbox mini
the-
fridge, and you'll be done with it, and then you'll have an excuse to do
Yeah,
it.
you're
Right?
right. You're right.
Yeah, I should get one of those once they come back in stock.
Sorry, excuse me. I'm
like-
derailing the show.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I'm always up for some banter. Yeah, so I had the original Oculus Rift in 2017. It came with it was back when it was still a fledgling hardware. It came with two controllers, two sensors that you plug into your computer that you put like right in front and next to your computer, so it could only front face. And the headset, which plugged into your computer via HDMI and USB 3.0.
Oh, it's two
Um,
cable system.
it was a two cable. It was a one cable went from the headset at the back down into your computer, and then it branched off into HDMI and USB.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
After an unfortunate incident in a sword fight,
Oh no.
the trigger, uh, the triggers have a click, right? Think of the GameCube trigger.
Yeah.
Where you squeeze
Mhm.
it and then it clicks at the end. The trigger no longer had that click after an unfortunate sword fighting incident, and then it also was just triggering itself. It wasn't responding to when I pressed it, and it wasn't not doing anything when it wasn't being pressed.
So it
it
kind of
was
just had a mind
randomly-
of its own a little bit.
It had a mind of its own, yes. So I was like, all right, well, I'll upgrade to the Oculus Rift S, which is the second generation. And that lasted 3 or so years, which that one actually didn't have tracking stations. All the tracking sensors were in the headset. It had a bunch of camera dots here so we could track where your controllers were relative. But the issue I had with that, aside from Facebook, which I believe Pete said we'll get into later, was that if you have a second monitor, the software would not recognize your headset.
Oh no, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you have a second monitor, it will not recognize your headset. If you have anything more than just a keyboard and mouse that would be taking USB power from your power supply, it wouldn't recognize the headset.
That's crazy.
And I looked at it and I was making
my
sure.
Quest in my Quest 2. I plugged it into my Mac
Well-
running Windows, and it finds it fine.
Well,
Like
that's you're running on you have a tower, I assume? Like a
It's
tower computer?
It's an iMac with
Well, I mean, like by tower
a
computer, I mean
secondary
not a
monitor.
laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a tower, like a state. Well, one. I mean, I troubleshooted.
I don't know.
Whatever the past tense is for that. Because my dad's computer is a step below mine, but it's a fully functional gaming computer with VR capability. So I was like, all right, I'll make sure that it's not my headset and that it's just my, something else. I plug it in, works perfectly fine because he's got one monitor, one keyboard, one mouse, and that's it.
Interesting.
So I was like, all right, I did a little Googling. Turns out everybody who has an Oculus with two monitors or multiple USB inserts has the same exact issue. So I said, well, to heck with this. I'm going to go get a Valve Index.
Oh my God.
And that's a big expense, right?
It was not cheap, but I had also been saving for it for a while anyway.
That was like $800 new, right? That was the
is
premium one.
$999 MSRP.
Okay, yeah. And that's
That's insane because you have to buy the headset, the base stations,
And the cameras.
controllers.
And the controllers, right.
Mhm.
and then there's 4 tracking cameras, right?
You can
Two
have up
tracking
to
cameras.
4.
You
Okay.
can have
I
up
think
to 4, but it comes with 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I remember a
Um,
friend of mine has I guess I don't know if he still has it. I haven't used it in a while. But he had it, and I remember he had 4, and it would be like you'd set up the grid, and then you had that kind of, here's the box that you
Exactly.
can operate within.
Right, and if you get too close to the box, like if I were to stick my hand out, it would actually pop up a grid wall
Yes,
in my
right, yeah.
view and put an outline on
It
the
would
floor.
like show you the real world. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
like, no, you're breaking into the other reality.
Mhm.
It wouldn't see. There's no cameras on the Index that would show you the real world, but it would show you where the wall was or where your play wall was.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different headset.
Did the Rift have a similar thing? Because the Quest
the
2
Oculus
has the
systems-
Guardian system.
The Oculus,
where
yes, they have a similar Guardian system, and the Rift S, and I believe the Quest, if it has a camera on the front of it, it'll actually flip on the external cameras and show you, hey,
it does, yeah.
you're like 2 inches
Okay.
away from punching your TV.
Okay, yeah, that's probably what I'm thinking of because I think my cousin has that one, and I've tried
Yeah.
that there as well.
But yeah. So I said, to heck with this. I'm gonna get an Index because obviously you guys, I don't have you guys on Facebook. You wouldn't know, but I deleted my Facebook, my Instagram. I completely purged it, not just a deactivation. Like it does not exist. at the end of last year. And I was like, well, the thing with that, Oculus requires a Facebook account.
Yep.
They do.
Like you
I
cannot
created
access
one last week.
if I didn't get an index, I would not be able to access my library. I wouldn't be able to play online, my friends list. I would have to run solely through Steam.
That's so frustrating.
Yeah, so I was
apparently
like,
they are changing it though, right? That's the word on the street. Is their new CEO has made a point of saying that this is changing and it's not gonna be the case.
I haven't heard anything like that, but I could see with the transition to Meta and focusing on
Yeah.
VR. Then
I think what is gonna happen is you can have rather than a Facebook account, you can have a Meta account.
Yeah.
And
right,
you log into all of their services with a Meta account. It's essentially going to be the same thing. But rather than it being linked to Facebook, if you don't want Facebook, but you want like just a Meta account for your Oculus, you could do
right,
that.
right. Like I mean, there's a few games on Oculus that are not on Steam. Like I don't have access to the Vader Immortal series anymore. I don't have access to Poker Stars, which was really fun. It's basically just online poker with fake money. No
I
real
was
money
enjoying the slot
involved.
machines in that the other day. It's great.
Oh, they have slot there now?
Yeah, you
Oh,
can
what
just
the
sit there,
heck?
play slot machines. There's a whole casino now. You could do roulette wheel, all of
Oh,
it. It's great.
I'm missing out. I think I still have my Rift up in the attic, but I'm not about to go and break out the Facebook account again.
So is that
But
your current headset or?
no, I'm on the Index now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's hooked up. And another issue I had with the Oculus, I had to restart my computer every time I wanted to play it. I had to pull a monitor out, restart the computer, get the Rift
Oh my
working,
God. Yeah, no thanks.
and then put the second monitor back in. And I was like, well, why am I doing 20 minutes of work, which could potentially crash and ruin everything, which is what happened during my Extra Life stream, which was the straw that broke the back. Oh yeah, just ask Sierra. She was with me for the whole 45 minutes that I was tearing my computer
if
apart.
it was anywhere near the rage you expressed at Danny during the Sea of Thieves stream.
Unfortunately, it wasn't near that because I couldn't direct it towards anything. Because company doesn't care. I can't yell at a company.
You're just defeated. Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
there. There's nothing more frustrating than when you're trying to like do a show or a production of some kind, and you're just having like a technical issue where it's like, this has worked every other time, and now I've got people sitting here watching me. Or
precisely that. It worked 10 minutes prior during a dry run to make sure that it was functioning.
Yep.
I put the headset on.
Drives me nuts. Yeah,
Disconnected. Done.
Yeah,
Didn't work.
That's a tough. I would also have gotten rid of that piece of technology.
Yeah. No. So I double checked it worked on my dad's computer. It was fully functional. It was just how it doesn't like my computer. Gave it a really good cleanup. eBayed it. Immediately put that money right towards the Index, and
Gotcha.
where I am happily still using the Index.
Nice. So
I'm curious of like a comparison between it. The one thing I'm most curious about, because I saw you holding the knuckle controller.
Yeah,
how does it compare
I figured
to the touch controller?
That's
I love this thing.
That's actually the same controller as the Rift S, but mine is the ones on the Rift S were black instead of white.
The original Quests were black instead of white. They've changed the whole headset is now this like off-white gray color, but you've got the cameras that you were talking about all around it. It's the same
the original
inside-out tracking
Rift,
system.
the controllers were the same as that one, but the rings were on the bottom, not the top.
okay.
You have the same as the Rift S because I think they're trying to standardize, from what I can gather.
They've actually phased out the Rift S now. This is the only headset they sell.
Oh, they're only selling Quest now.
Yeah.
So they're definitely trying to standardize. And then there's that link cable you could buy, I assume, for PC VR.
Do not buy that link cable. It's just a USB-C cable that's overpriced, and a USB-C cable will work.
$85 or something like that?
Yeah.
That's
you can also do it wirelessly through Oculus Air Link.
Yeah, but that runs through your Wi-Fi and eats up a lot of your bandwidth, I've heard.
Yeah.
So, and then the Index controllers, I had it before because I knew it would probably come up. It's just very simple.
Yeah, they're crazy looking compared to this. They're the thing down the side. And that's the tracking sensors down the like knuckle bit.
This right here is what the headset sensors will look for.
Okay.
or the tracking stations will look for.
Yeah,
They'll
for
look
those of
this
you
based on the orientation.
For those of you who are audio listeners, we're showing them off on YouTube. If you've seen like a traditional VR controller, that's like the one that Steve was just showing off. Is like you got the move Wiimote style.
Looks very much like the PSVR 2.
Yeah,
Right.
they're paddles.
Yeah.
They're paddles, and they've got little
It's
things
a big
that
ring
can
halo on it.
Yeah, that can track
Break
your
the two grips off a controller off and have them separately.
Yeah, like they're almost like Joy-Cons or something like that. Whereas the one that Doc's showing off, it has like. Could you hold it
It's
up
a
again?
knuckle duster.
Yeah,
The best way I can describe it, picture a capital D.
Yeah, and it has a wrist handheld thing, and like it looks
I
a
used
lot.
to have a Thrustmaster joystick that looked exactly like that in the early 2000s.
Oh, like a flight stick? I've got one of those now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does have that
exactly
kind of
like
look
that.
to it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were asking about the touch sensitivity. So it does have sensors, so it picks up, like if I do this, my model in-game will actually...
Right.
Or I'm wiggling my fingers for the audio listeners. It will actually wiggle my fingers the same way. The trigger has a touch sensor as well as the squeeze sensor, and then same with the AB.
Yeah, they're all capacitive.
Yeah, AB, touchpad, and the stick will all recognize contact.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so obviously, even just like talking through a few of those examples, like we've seen a lot of evolution in the technology in a pretty small amount of time, going from the point where you had way more simplistic controllers and all these wires stuck to your head and everything, and now we're seeing a lot of development in the evolution of the control schemes, and pretty much every headset from now on will be wireless, right? Like that's pretty much
my guess.
Everybody's got their wireless version out now at this.
At least there'll be a wireless version, but I do think there's still going to be a need for like a display link direct feed straight into a headset. People are
the index is wired. The index is also wired. It's got same thing. It's got a wire coming off the back. It goes out, splits into a display port and a USB-C.
Okay.
Or USB 3. But the only reason that's still the thing is VR. There's no way to get the technology required for full scale VR into such a compact box.
Yeah, right. Which is, I think, one of the interesting things about the technology, right? Is like we've seen a lot of evolution over the last couple of years, but it still definitely has a lot of challenges in that regard. Like, it feels like the biggest barrier to it being more than it is that the technology is just literally not there yet. There are limitations in terms of being able to make things small enough and, more cost effective and all those things, because, obviously, even the cheapest VR headset is, it's come down quite a bit, but it's still, a couple $100.
I think it's $300 for a Quest at this point,
right?
On a good day,
which is like not a bad point of entry, but it's also not.
No,
it's prohibitive.
But it's like buying a used modern console, or
it's the same price as a Series S, right?
Right.
And I think they're $299 over that.
For something that is like, I would say, inarguably a more niche product. It's something that you will not get as much use out of as
undoubtedly,
an Xbox or
undoubtedly.
So,
although I do think that depends on the person.
Yeah.
Because I do think there are some people that just do not play consoles, but are more likely to crack something like this out that you can just use on its own and pop it on your head. Like, I don't have any of those same issues that Doc had, where I've got to like set it up, put sensors in a specific room or anything like that. With the Quest, you just put it on your head and it works.
It's a way more plug and
wakes
play.
Up and then immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way more plug and play kind of experience. I tried a Quest 2. 2 is the current one, right?
The white, was it a white one?
Yeah.
That's the Quest 2, yeah.
Yeah. I tried one of those last year, and that was the first time I had like a wireless VR experience, and it definitely felt a lot less cumbersome than some of the more, like, I guess now legacy hardware that I had experienced before. But it does come into a question here I want to pull out of the question block. This one comes from one of our Patreon producers, Andy Radford, who wrote in and said, do the vast majority of people / gamers really want to sit around for a couple of hours with something strapped to their head? And that's something I mentioned last week. And I think that was something that I found interesting with the Quest was, or with the Quest 2, I should say, was getting to that point where, oh, this is way lighter and it doesn't have shit strapped to it, and this is a way better, more comfortable, more plug-and-play type experience, and I still felt this way. I still hit a point where I was like, I was playing, what is it, that Walking Dead game that came out last year. It's like
Saints and Sinners.
Saints and Sinners, yeah. Which is like a fairly impressive game. It was one of the more like robust VR experiences. That
and Resident Evil 4, I will probably say, are the most impressive games on the Quest platform at the moment.
Okay, yeah. So it's up there. It's one of the more like looked at as one of the more premium experiences, right? And I think I played it for like 45 minutes, and I was like, yeah, I'm good. Like my eyes were starting to feel tired. Like I was my head was like a little bit uncomfortable. I didn't want to be. I had been standing for a while, and then I tried sitting down because I realized I didn't really need to be standing for the way that the game was. And, like, I ended up just hitting this point where I'm like, this is cool, but the novelty of it wore off pretty quickly in terms of, like, whoa, like, this is a really immersive Walking Dead experience. This is neat. Becomes mundane pretty quickly for me as a player. And then I'm just like, this is just it's just a shooter or a this or a that, and it's a little clunkier and less comfortable and less fun to play than something that's, more traditional, at least for me, and I would by no means call myself like a VR hater, but like, I think I'm increasingly realizing that like, it really feels like a novelty for me in a lot of ways. And I think that what Andy wrote in here is like one of the things that really has been a barrier for me is like, it's just not as comfortable as looking at my nice, 4K, 55, 60 inch, whatever the fuck I have now, QLED TV. Like, I just feel like that's a better experience than this tiny compressed camera that's on my fucking face and I can't wear my glasses with it, or they're uncomfortable, or my eyes get strained, or what the fuck ever, right? Like all these problems.
Yeah, but see, those are like some of those factors I think you could change. So like you put a decent head strap on it, I think that would make it a lot more comfortable. If you really got into it, you would probably buy prescription lenses so you could actually see better. You'd probably measure your IPD, which is your intrapupillary distance, to find out which setting on the Quest or whichever headset you get is actually suited to your eyes so you don't get as tired quickly. A lot of those things can happen, but I mean, I will say I can probably play for an hour at most, and then I take the thing off, but I don't think that's a problem. Like an hour-long experience is I've still entertained myself for an hour, had a really good time with it. And there are experiences that I don't think, maybe the Walking Dead game is not a great example, but I do think there are experiences that you can't really get in a traditional game that you can only experience in VR.
I definitely acknowledge that. Like something like Job Simulator, right, is like very unique in that could only be in VR, and that's cool, and it's whatever, and it's novel. But like, again, it's like I played that game and it was cool and it was novel, but like once I had played it for like 20 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I've seen what this is, and it's like, to your point.
How immersive was like the Walking Dead though? Because I played one called Pal of Shack yesterday, and I almost ran into my TV. It was like teaching me how to do a grenade.
Yeah.
And I dropped the grenade on the ground, and I looked down at the ground, and the grenade was about to blow up. And I went to run, and I was like, shit, no, I can't run. Because if I ran, I'm going to hit my TV.
Yeah.
And so I had to move my stick to walk off. And that was like the first moment I'd had where I was like, holy shit, like my mind, even though I know looking at this, that this is a game, it doesn't look phenomenal.
You got tricked.
Because like I'm running this on like essentially an Android phone. It still tricked my brain into thinking that grenade's going to explode and kill me in a minute, which just blew me away.
Yeah, and I've had that. Like I mentioned earlier, I had a friend who had a Vive, and I remember the first time that he brought it over to my house, we went in my basement, and I had a big open space on the floor. So we were able to really set it up properly and have the nice big space and everything. And I don't remember what the name of the game was, but it was like a shooting gallery type game where there's like all these robots in a factory that turn evil and they try to kill you. And
Boneworks?
What's that?
Was it Boneworks?
Could be Boneworks.
Could have been.
I'm surprised you didn't vomit if it was Boneworks. That game looks intense.
I don't know, but I remember like playing, and there was a moment where I was like, like ducking and hiding behind stuff and whatever and that kind of thing. But I remember I was watching my friend play, and he was shooting, and somebody came up, and he literally did like a belly dive, like dove forward and was still shooting and was like, oh shit, and like really, really was like in it, and like, yeah, like those moments are really fun and cool. And I don't mean to denigrate them, but I also am like, yeah, like that is cool and fun, but it's the kind of thing I'd rather have it be like my friend has it and it's like, look at this cool thing, rather than me going through the trouble of it all the time. It's like going through and it's like,
but what does it need to do in order for you to like where does it need to get to? What price point? What like form factor or like thing? Because like the Quest is at a point where it's got hand tracking as well, so you don't even need to use the controllers if you don't want to. In some games, you can just use your hands.
Yeah.
Like Vacation Simulator, which is the follow-up to Job Simulator. You don't need to use the controllers at all. You can just pick up a bun with your hands and like make a burger.
So I think for me, the big thing is like, I think price is less important to me than, because I piss money away on stupid stuff all the time. I'm an enthusiast. Like I bought an arcade cabinet that I have no need for, right? I'll buy something that's expensive if I feel like it's worth it. But I think for me, it's both it needs to be more plug and play, and there needs to be a higher caliber of experiences. Because the best experiences I've ever had on VR are not something I want to play for more than like 15 or 20 minutes, And I just don't think that to me, that feels tough, And I'll bring in another question here, and I'll turn this over to Doc. This one comes from another one of our Patreon supporters, Matthew Murphy, who wrote in and said, what do you guys think is the real hook of VR? I know there's a lot of 18-plus jokes about why you should own an Oculus, but in terms of games, why does it really matter? Does one good game justify a $500-plus experience?
I mean, all right, before you hand it over to Doc, I just want to say, how many people bought a PS5 to play Spider-Man? It's the exact same thing. Like, people might buy PSVR 2 in order to play the Horizon VR game that looks fucking great. It all depends on if that experience is something you're willing to dive into. Like, I can imagine a lot of people bought VR so they could play the new Half-Life game.
So, and I just want to respond to that point that you made, which is I think that's a little different because we've talked about how when you buy a new console, it's very much like I'm investing in the future of this ecosystem, right? And I can pretty much bank that I will get at least 5 years out of my PlayStation 5 and that I'll get X number of exclusive games that will increase in quality as, over the life cycle of the device. Whereas, VR's only existed for 5 years, and Doc, our expert, has had 4 headsets?
3.
Still a lot.
3, and what? To be fair, one of them was my own user error. I'm not gonna rip into the technology for that. And I'll put it this way: controllers and tables do not mix when you swing them at top Jesus.
But point being, I don't think that those are as much one-to-one because I think that these are, generally speaking, they're on par or more expensive for something that I think you're getting less bang for your buck.
I would counter that because a lot of the game, and I'm not trying to rip into the experiences you've had, but a lot of the games you were describing were party tech demos. For lack of a better phrase, party tech demos. I would say take Gorn or
Job I played
Simulator.
Similar.
Then once you get used to it, I always compare it to getting your sea legs. Right? You get used to VR. You get used. I think in the last week I've probably spent 5 or 6 hours with a box strapped to my head cumulatively.
How
You
long
get
do you
used to
go
the
for at
feeling.
a time? Because like my dad obviously wrote in and said, who wants to sit around for a couple of hours? How long is
It
your play session usually?
it depends on the game I feel like playing. My
Okay.
longest session was probably 4 hours, and that was
Holy
in
shit,
VR
okay.
chat. That was in VR
Okay.
chat because one of the groups I'm in, we'll just all hang out in VR chat for hours and hours and hours, just hanging out, doing little games, exploring the worlds there. Um, but once you get used to VR, you would check out something like maybe Blade and Sorcery, which takes Gorn and then ramps it up to a more realistic level to the point where, like, if you fall more than 20 feet, you're gonna take damage.
I think what is it? I think Blood and Truth. I think was that. That was one of the Sony first party ones that I think came out. It was like one of the last big games on PSVR, and I think that was like
You
a
know,
similar, deeper, more fully realized like RPG type experience.
Yeah, I think the problem I had with PlayStation VR was there was no way to move other than teleportation or it being on rails. You didn't have a stick on those move controllers. And so if you wanted to play with the move controllers and the motion and stuff, you're stuck with one of those teleportation types, like
Yeah.
transportation types. Whereas like the more modern VR systems all have sticks on the controller and you can just move around freely, which was what you would expect.
Right. And again, like I said, that's something you'd have to get used to. When I first got the headset, when I first got my first Oculus, when I moved forward, the world moved around me, but my brain didn't. So I would actually
Oh
I
yeah.
would
Mhm.
car inertia move back a little bit
I had
because I
what was that game? It was the mech fighting game. It was one of the first ones. Oh, I can't remember it, but I'm sure somebody in the chat remembers. But that was a game that I remember having that because there was like an elevator, like you were in this mech, and I think you used the regular PlayStation controller. But it would be like you would turn your head and you would like see around,
Was it Riggs?
Yeah, Riggs. It was Riggs. I think I also played that, so I might be conflating features from two different games, but I definitely played that one as well, and I think had a similar experience where there was an elevator that you would get in, and it would bring you down to the area where you would actually walk around and play and fight or whatever. And every time I would go in the elevator, because I didn't feel the elevator moving, like I had like a feeling disembodied kind of. It was weird. Yeah, it really it fucks with your like spatial reasoning.
you get very used to that very quickly if you just stick with VR. I can say that from experience. I picked up Skyrim VR when that was
Yeah.
still hot and fresh. That threw me off for a while, but then I was like, all right, boom, done. The only games I really can't do that would throw me off in terms of like motion sickness and vertigo, Elite Dangerous has a VR option.
Mm,
Similar to you were saying, you have the headset on, but you have a controller or access
yeah.
to your keyboard if you remember your hotkeys. But I can move around on a 2D plane just fine. I can run, I can jump, I can swing a sword and not hit my table and break my controller. And scar my hand. I don't know if you could see it, but
You
still
scarred
have
your
a-
hand
From
in
VR?
VR?
Oh my gosh.
when I say I hit the table, let's say this is I'm holding up a water glass for the audio. I swing up, smash the table at full swing.
Oh,
Oh man.
But yeah, the only things that really throw me off at this point would be Elite Dangerous, because that's you're in a ship and you're rotating, spinning, adjusting.
I did that with Ace Combat 7, I remember, and I actually was okay with that because for some reason my brain was like fine with the idea that it's like you're in a cockpit. Because it's like,
Yeah,
wait,
but
I'm the exact same. When I'm sat down and I'm moving,
It's
it's like
fine.
I'm just in a car. I'm
Exactly,
on a train.
exactly.
The
No
counter
problem.
with that is you guys have a horizon. There's no horizon in space.
that's true.
Okay.
Oh my
So
god,
So you've got the ground,
okay.
so okay, well, my brain is supposed to be tricked into being at a 30-degree angle,
Right.
slightly
Right.
tilted
Okay.
downwards. In space, everything's just moving.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that is something that I definitely it's an interesting quirk of it for sure. But Doc, to take it back to Matt's question, so what do you think is the hook? Like, as somebody who was an early adopter, continues to fuck around with VR, what is it about it that speaks to you?
It's Initially was the novelty. I will not lie and say that it wasn't just the novelty of being able to play a game in VR. At this point, though, I would say it's more the social experiences in a game like I'm just happening to note Pete's list of games, or not Pete's, Steve's list of games. He's got Rec Room on here. I'm sure you've heard of VR Chat.
I was in VR chat. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was playing Rec Room with a friend. We played some paintball in it, and it was just so much fun, just like
Yeah.
running around and shooting people.
Yeah, VR Chat is like Rec Room, but I don't want to say it's the Wild West, but it's much more expansive.
It seems
But that
Oh
also
like
no,
means
it
that there's
definitely is the Wild West. I accidentally ended up in some room, which I think was run by like an OnlyFans person, and she had like on the wall it was like like top supporters
that
and
would not
stuff.
surprise me. There's a lot of NSFW content you can stumble into. A lot of furry content, a lot of public worlds where people will just be
like
wild.
as someone who's like very on the outside of like VR and like this community, like what I know about VR chat is just like things I've seen in screenshots like that. And like it reminds me of what's that what is it Ready Player One is the thing I'm thinking of, right? It was a book, and then like there was the Steven Spielberg
Yeah.
Ender's
movie.
Game, maybe? No, not Ender's Game. Maybe it's Ready Player. Yeah, Ready Player
It
One.
is
Yeah,
Ready
which was-
Player One.
Yeah, and it was
It-
like everybody had like all these different characters as their avatars and
Right.
everything. Like that's
Right.
the impression that I've gotten
And-
from it, is that it's
and-
kind of like a primitive version of that.
Yeah, and to VR Chat's defense, that's probably 10%, but it's a very vocal minority. Like the group
Yeah.
I'm in, we're a Halo themed group. So my avatar is like a Spartan with custom armor, custom color schemes. But you could find a Link avatar. You could find a Frisk avatar from Undertale. You could just be some dude. You could be if you were doing like a recording for some machinima, you could find a camera avatar that would match. So you obviously have a camera for a head, so people would know this is where you're looking. That's what's on film.
Huh.
Oh
Okay.
my god, that's so weird. I was dressed up as a banana. I was having a great time.
So
So
so you're saying it's more the social experiences and those kinds of things. Where do you? Oh, go ahead.
2022, yeah, it's in 2022. It's the social experience, and then there's other games like Blade and Sorcery, like I was saying before. I could go play Skyrim, press the right trigger, swing the sword, press the right trigger, swing the sword the exact same way, and just keep repeating the same motions out ad nauseum.
There's no like motion like that.
In console Skyrim, yeah, but if I were to go into Blade and Sorcery, it's full 1-to-1 tracking.
That's
So
cool.
I could have a buckler on my right arm and a dagger on my left, and I could bash with the buckler,
And then
go in for another side hit with the thinner end of it, and then slice, and that would actually register as a smash, a hit, and then a slice.
that's cool.
With no tables in the way, though. No tables.
Yes, with no tables in the way. I have since moved the coffee table out of the room when I and there's a certain and it's a level of immersion as well. I don't know. Did I say immersion for this particular point?
No,
I don't know.
no.
Yeah, so there's a level of immersion, right? So like if I'm playing Star Wars Battlefront on my computer, I have my hand on a keyboard, my hand on a mouse, and I'm looking at a screen, and I'm just moving my hands. If I'm playing, let's say, Pavlov VR, which is an FPS, I'm actually in the battlefield holding the rifle in my hands, ducking under cover, reaching out and shooting, as opposed to, just control, click, WASD.
I find that to
Yeah,
be
honestly, Pavlov was so cool. Like,
I love it. And the mod support is incredible as well.
just for VR in
like-
general, or for that game.
Yeah, like, I keep going back to Blade and Sorcery, but that's my go-to game right now.
Yeah.
I downloaded a
Let's
mod
check
called
that
The
out.
Outer Rim that adds 120 lightsabers,
Oh shit, that's awesome.
like 50 different lightsaber colors you can put on, all the blasters.
Yeah, I mean it's very cool that because VR is niche, like the people that are into it are like real into it. There's like a real enthusiast,
There's an enthusiast level, correct?
community to it, which is definitely cool, and I can definitely see the appeal of that.
do you think it's going to break out of that though? Like, I really think PSVR 2 is like the one to do it if it can do it. It's already the second best selling PSVR is the second best selling headset after the Quest 2. And I think with like a one cable system, if they can get the price right, with killer games like that, it looks like they're bringing some of their big franchises into it this time, which I think was part of the problem last time. Is we mainly had like stuff on rails or smaller experiences. Like Beat Saber is still the number one PSVR game.
They had a lot of the best licensed stuff too, though. Like they had like that Iron Man game. They were like
the Spider-Man one.
They had the Batman
that
game.
Iron Man game is what really kills me about not having PSVR.
Yeah, and like
I am not a big superhero guy. Like, I'm not big into the MCU. I really only watch the MCU because me and my ex were big into it, and I just happened to click with it.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Man VR was the one thing that was like, man, I really want a PSVR just for that one game.
That's
but I'm
one
not
of
going to
those
shell out.
IP that it just makes sense, right? You can see how easy it would be for that to be fucking rad.
And even then, there's VR chat worlds where there's things set up where you can just shoot your hand out. You got a Spider-Man web. You're already flying. You don't need to download a new game or get new hardware. You can just do boop VR chat. I'm flying as Spider-Man.
Yeah, and that is cool. But I wanted to touch on something that you said before that I think is an interesting note, which is like the immersion element of it, because I find that to be really interesting because we talked about like those moments, right, where like you get lost in it and you're like, oh, like I feel like I'm really here, and those moments I feel like do have that heightened kind of sense of immersion or reality for me, but more often than not, I find I have the opposite effect. It has the opposite effect where because I'll have, it's interesting because I've noticed it with things like if I'm in a world where I can interact with things and then I find something I can't interact with, I'm like, oh. Or like if I have that moment where I do bump up against the area I'm not supposed to go anymore and I'm like, oh, right, this is a video game. Like I feel like there are so many moments that take me out of it that remind me I'm playing a video game that I actually find it to be like less immersive overall than when I'm playing a game and I really like get in a rhythm with it and commit to it, you know? And yeah, like I'm only moving my hands or whatever, but like I have those moments where like if I'm playing like an open world game and I jump off of a cliff and I don't have like a glider or something like that to do, like my stomach drops, you know? And like I do get immersed in traditional games in a way that I find I'm often not able to get all the way there with VR experiences, I think because of some of the technical limitations, which is why like I'm interested in seeing where the tech goes from here. And that actually takes us into our last question of the day, which comes from another one of our Patreon supporters, Trendy Brendy, who wrote in and said, it's not a very creative use of the technology, but something I've wanted since I was a kid, and this stuff was science fiction, was for there to be a VR mode in most games, like the one Nintendo threw in Breath of the Wild. Just being the camera while I play the game regular-like. Motion sickness would be awful for most people, but I'd like it. What VR gameplay ideas are you most excited about? And I think for me, I am like most excited by the idea of limited experiences that are not at the home. Like I could really see like theme parks being the best place for VR. Cause like imagine being in like a laser tag facility, right? But everybody has goggles on and is actually holding a physical gun. And then you can have cameras, like, you know, maybe that blend AR and VR.
That exists. You can go and do that.
Yeah,
and like,
they have, they make
gyms.
technology, they call them, they have stand-in technology for VR. Some are 360-degree treadmills, some are little bowls with capacitive sensors.
And I feel like the closer we get to those kinds of things, the more likely it is for it to be something that like I'll vibe with, especially because the intent of that would be to be limited, right? It would be, oh, you're going to go in for a round of laser tag, which is the example I always go to.
Right.
Because it's something that already exists. You can see easily how that would work.
Yeah, the biggest issue with something like that is prohibitive cost and space. Like for the bowl, and the treadmill, you would need at least a 6x6 area to put it, and not everybody who has a VR headset has a 6x6 space.
Right, yeah. And that's the thing, right, is like I am very interested about like seeing what like a Disney or a Universal or something like that does, where they can, you know, build a hangar that is just for VR experiences.
On an industrial scale, it would be incredible.
Like, you know, like imagine it's like, oh, it's a fantasy experience and everyone pops on their goggles and you've got the foam sword and I've got the foam bow and oh, there's a dragon. Like, you know, like those are things I think could be really cool and really immersive, and, you know, we could be in the room and see each other, but we've got weird costumes on and like that kind of thing, or whatever, right? Like it's an avatar. I don't know. I think those are the things that I'm most excited about. And when it comes to like home consumer VR, I feel like the things that are going to be most interesting are like probably non-game applications. Like I think it would be way more interesting to be able to be like, you know, front row center at an event that you could never afford to go to as a poor person, but you can pop on your VR goggles and feel like you're sitting there, right? Like those kinds of things are the things that I feel like are going to be the most exciting to like average consumers anyway.
They're cool, but like I don't know. I've had so many like in the short week I've had this thing. I've already had so many experiences where I have just been immersed. Like I was playing Half-Life 1, and there's that. I don't know if either of you have played Half-Life, but you come down in that lift, and there's all those like
1998 Half-Life.
The 1998
That's
Half-Life.
in VR.
Yeah, it is. Dr. Beef
That's news
bought
to
it.
me.
That's
great.
cool.
And there's the thing where all the head crabs like jump down and you're on this lift and they're like all over my head and I'm like freaking out and shooting like my gun at them and they're like attacking me and like all those kind of things are just, they're so much fun, and I'm hungry for more. And I really think if anyone could do it, Sony could do it with VR too. And I just hope that we get exactly what Trendy Brandy wants. I really think it's not a boring concept to just want to be the camera, because that's essentially what you should be. But you combine that with a more immersive experience, like in Palov, like I've got to pull the gun off of my hip, I've got to get a clip out and put it in the gun, and now I'm like reloading it, and then when I run a reload I've got to take the old clip out and chuck it on the floor. It's the same thing with Half-Life Alyx. And in something like Half-Life Alyx, Pete, you said like, oh, I get taken out of it because there's things I can't interact with. You can interact with everything in that game.
I'm very interested to try that because of that element to it. You know, like that sounds really impressive.
And what Valve did with the production value, they actually have their main selling point was that it was built for the Index. I put the controller a couple feet behind me, but it was built for the Index with full 5-finger tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually had, like, if you could grab a bottle of wine and you move it around, you'll see the fluids inside of it moving to match what you did. It was built for VR. It wasn't just a game that was ported over.
Right.
Or a single A indie game.
Yeah, and I think that's something that like is another one of the things that I think has probably been part of why VR hasn't as grown as much as it could, is that like because it's a more niche product, I feel like a lot of the bigger players are kind of gun shy about investing the amount of resources it requires to make an Alyx.
Right.
You know, because it's like really.
But if Sony can sell as many as they did of the original VR headset, I think
they could sell
why
more.
wouldn't you sell a $70 game to people that bought that? Because they're hungry for the games anyway. They've bought your console, they've bought your headset. Now just sell them games. I think that's when more developers get on board and start making more experiences. We might see someone like Ubisoft or EA getting into that space and bringing some of their franchises.
Potentially.
Can you imagine like a full Star Wars game in VR that's not like Vader Immortal, but like a full-on, I don't know, just like you're there with your lightsabers and you're like blocking all the blasters coming at you as you're walking down the area.
I just don't feel like we're there. VR. Oh, yeah. See, Squadrons is the kind of thing I think makes sense because you're in a fucking cockpit anyway, right? Like, that is perfect. But the idea of like a full...
And going back to what you said, there's a certain level of suspension of disbelief that you need to truly enjoy full VR. Like, if I'm walking around a castle and I see a cage on the ground that I can move the door of, yeah, fine. I'm obviously not going to think, well, I can now move the whole cage. I think that's built into the world and I can only move the door.
But
Or
I feel like that's the same with video games in general, right? I'm not
yeah,
like up. I know, oh, that door's got gold handles, so I can go through that one. But the rest of them, they're like black handles, so I'm not allowed to go in those doors. But I don't get
yeah,
upset about it.
it's a subconscious suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, I think it's the uncanny valley effect. Whereas the more close to real life something is, the more you expect of it to be real. So when you have those moments where you bump up against it, for me anyway, right? That's, I'm just one player.
Right.
Those moments break my immersion more than like in a quote unquote, traditional game. If there's a door I can't open, I'm like, okay, I can't open this door. This is not a place I should be able to go. But in a game that's encouraging me to be like, look, you can pick up this mug and move it. Like, yes, oh, look how here you are.
Yeah.
As soon as it's like, oh, but I can't pick up the pen, that's weird,
But that's an issue with
Right.
game design. I don't think that's an issue with VR as a technology.
No,
because
not at all. No.
there are examples of games where you can pick everything up and they are all like tangible items. I think in
Right, like
Skyrim you
Alex.
can pick most things up as well.
Yeah, or like in Alex, they did a good job with that. Like if you're not meant to go down an area, they won't just slap a door there. They'll throw rubble in front of the door.
See, like that's
Like
that's good
immovable
design.
rubble.
That's smart, right?
Yeah,
Because then it's not.
I would say that
Why can't I do this?
is also based on the design of the game. Yeah,
Mhm. Well, and resources,
Um,
right? Because VR is expensive
yeah,
to develop
resources.
for, which is the other problem.
expensive to develop for, and it takes a lot of computing resources as well. So like if I, for instance, pile everything on a table in VR and then just slap it all off, making everything have its own collision and physics that is calculating, it's gonna stutter and chop as it processes.
Right.
And then to go back what you said with attending an event, just because bringing up the camera thing keeps reminding me. VR chat actually covers that quite a lot. New Year's Eve, they had a world that was modeled after Times Square.
It's like that's cool. Like I feel
Yeah.
like things like that I can definitely see the appeal of.
Yeah,
in
or
a big
like they
way.
would have, like they have a lot of worlds have like a stream setup or a video player setup that accepts Twitch and YouTube links. So if let's say I wanted to watch the Olympics in VR, I could go into a world that has a stream setup, go to the Olympics Twitch channel because they have a Twitch channel for the Olympics, which is neat. And then just plug that in, and I'd be sitting here. I could be sitting in the Forest Temple from Ocarina of
Right.
Time, watching the Olympics as a Halo Spartan. It's just a certain level of wild,
And
imagination that you wouldn't have
and like
anticipated.
big screen's a similar thing, right? They're like selling movies in big screen now. So like when we were all closed during the pandemic, you could
right.
go there and watch a movie
Right.
with either
Yeah.
friends or strangers, and you're all having this social experience
Yeah,
together that you
and
can't do in
Exactly.
real life.
I think that stuff is really cool, and I see that application being more popular than video games because like that's not really a game, right? Like it's an experience, and I think like I would love to talk about this more, but we do have to wrap up here because we have a stream coming up. But that's I feel like where we see a lot of companies talking about the metaverse and pushing us towards that, which has its own layers of problems and is something I'm definitely inherently not interested in. But like I could very much see the appeal of being like, oh, hey, like. Right, like Steve and I, right, are good friends. We've been close friends for years. We've never been able to spend time together in the same room. How cool would it be if we could pop on a headset and it feels like we're sitting on a couch together watching TV, like, or having dinner together? Like, those are things, or like, like, oh, hey, like, oh, yeah, like I live far away from my family, right, and I want to be home for family dinner. Everybody pops on a headset and it's like I'm there. Like, those are things I could very much see being popular applications of it that are not video games. And that's...
But why not do that and then play games with them while you're in that experience?
And
that's where we're going, right?
We absolutely are. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I don't want to sound like I keep shilling VR chat, but that's exactly what you can do.
No, yeah, I mean that's why we brought you.
Yeah,
here, right?
like
'Cause
and
you're the
you
one
don't
who's
need you don't
experienced that.
Yeah,
stuff.
you don't need a headset to play VR chat. You can play it on a desktop computer. You won't have full like mobility. You'll just be like walking around just like a standard model. But somebody made an Among Us map. If you wanted to play Among Us with your friends in VR, you could go play Among Us. If you wanted to wander around Times Square, like I said. Like I could wander. Me and Steve could put on our headsets and wander around Times Square like we're 10 feet away from each other.
I would love
Or
to try all
Hyrule
of that with
Castle.
you sometime.
Yeah. Yeah. After this, I'll send you my VR chat name.
There you
But
go.
Yeah, definitely do.
It's the social experiences. If you know where to look for them, which inherently having to look for them is part of the issue. But if you know where to look for the social experiences, you can have the time of your life.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, it's still a very young technology, you know, like
Yeah,
any of the things
it's like the NES during the height of the arcade era. It's still, you know.
Yeah, and it's like any of the things that I identified are all things that could absolutely just be solved by the technology evolving and developing. And, you know, I definitely think that it's here to stay. But I definitely am interested to see 10 years from now, like what are the vast majority of people doing with VR, right? Like I have a feeling it won't be video games as much as video games was the thing that broke through and made
Yeah.
VR consumer tech. But
I agree with you. I think it becomes more mainstream in general, though. But that's the same as all technology, right?
Absolutely,
People were playing
yeah.
games on PCs, but now we use PCs for absolutely everything.
Yep.
And the same thing with like everyone has a phone, but you can play games on them, and lots of people do play games on them. It's arguably the biggest gaming platform in the world, but most people use it for Facebook or to scroll through pictures.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of really, really incredible applications for the technology beyond this consumer stuff that we think about, right? For like education and medicine and all these things that.
Well, they're like the stuff that you see like engineers doing, and they're like walking around a giant scale model of a car they're working on that they can't build yet, but they can like get up close and see if everything fits and it like all works together.
And I'm thinking about how cool it would be to be able to like recreate, you know, like, oh, here's what New York City looked like 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, and you could go walk around it and like have those kinds of experiences. Like I think there's so many exciting technologies that will, you know.
Yeah, Microsoft's done a lot of that with HoloLens, right?
Yeah, with the HoloLens, they were sending 360 cameras up and then AI stitching them together so that you can go to like the ruins of like ancient Athens, strap a headset on, and you're wandering around ancient Athens.
That's I mean, like
or a friend of mine works for an architectural firm. He actually there's software he uses where he builds the structures, like he builds the house in a 3D model, and his headset is compatible with that. So he theoretically wild. he could build my house, right? And you could just wander around it, say, okay, well this is bedroom, you know, this is bathroom. You know, this would be the office space that you would have structural I-beam, and you could pull a layer off. You know, here's a 2-foot structural I-beam here that has to stay during remodels. I think some doctors or some hospitals are actually doing like training, like surgical training in VR.
Oh, that would be such cool. Or even like looking at CT scans and things like that, where you can like visually zoom in and see where it is.
Or some Iron Man level where you're like scaling up a hologram to.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, you know, is like we're very early days here, and you know I'm sure, you know, in the next 5 years we'll see it evolve 5 times as much as we have in the last 5 years. So, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of things I said today that I will inevitably eat my words on. So, yeah, it's interesting technology to say the absolute least. But Doc, thank you so much for joining us. It was really great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to have your take on all this stuff because you've got a lot more experience with it than I do for sure, and than Steve does right now anyway. Because I feel like he's going to be a VR boy from here on out. So we'll see how that sticks with him. But
I prefer the term virtual boy, but
yes, you are a real virtual boy. So Doc, real quick, let everybody know where they can find you and about your Twitch show.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ThatDocGuy_ because some inactive jerk from 2011 has ThatDocGuy and I can't claim it.
Yup, yeah, no, Loud_Pete was totally a conscious choice that I made.
Yeah, same. And then on Twitch at ThatDocGuy, you said to mention the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, me and fellow Patreon producer Zaid Ida are running a 100% playthrough of Ocarina of Time every Monday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
There you go. Get retro. Check it out. All right, so Doc, thanks again for joining us. Remember, if you want to be a Patreon producer like Doc and Zaid, head over to patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. You can get a bunch of cool perks and goodies, show your support for the show, get a little bit of extra content in your feed, get archives of our Twitch channel and all of our streams over there on twitch.tv/FlipScreenGames, all kinds of stuff. Come join the Discord. Come join the community. FlipScreen.games is our website. It has links to everywhere we are on the web. Wherever you are, that we are, go be there and follow us. Like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. You know how internet at this point. So, thank you guys for joining us here on another episode of the Flip Screen Games podcast. I've been Pete. He's been Doc. He's been Steve. And we'll see you next week.